Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Dillard. It was Dillard's Draws. How's everything going?
What up, John? Everything's going great with me.
It's not a party till the wieners come out. Yeah, I got to agree
I'm
with
gonna
that.
take my silly hat off.
Nah, you can leave your silly hat off. Silly hats never hurt nobody.
My wife tried to hide it from me. I bought it at Wiener Schnitzel. She tried to hide my hat from me.
Wiener Schnitzel. There's no more Wiener Schnitzels in New York, at least not by me anymore. But I remember them as a kid. And are you a punk rocker? Do you listen to punk at all?
Absolutely not. Certainly
okay.
not.
There was a band called The Descendants, and they had a song called The Wiener Schnitzel. So I was like, I gotta go find the Wiener. And there was one on Long Island that I would drive all the way out, and
they're so good. Like yeah. It's one of those. Remember when you were little and you used to buy like those little like cosmic brownies or those little treats that were like 25 cents, and they were so good when you were little, and you try to buy one as an adult and you're like disgusted.
Well, everything has changed. I don't know
if but Wiener Schnitzel has it. It's you buy it and it's still just as it's junk food, but man, it tastes amazing.
It's for those of you who don't know what we're talking about. Wiener Schnitzel it's like it's not a hamburger joint. It's a hot dog joint, and you can get hot dogs. They got French fries and my favorite chili dogs. So there you go.
That's their claim to fame is their chili. Yeah, chili cheese fries, chili dogs, chili cheeseburgers.
It's disgusting and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I got to ask you, since you broached one of my favorite topics, which is junk food. Do you got White Castle by you?
No.
No.
I live in Southern California. There's not a White Castle for 1,000 miles around here.
Yeah, because Wiener Schnitzel. Yeah, it died out in New York. It didn't do too good. But you got In-N-Out Burger out there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
They're okay.
I'm glad you said that because I've been hearing about In-N-Out Burger for years. I got cousins that live in California, and they're like, "Oh, you gotta go to In-N-Out Burger." It's okay.
Yeah, the people that claim that don't really got anything else going on in their lives.
That's what I think. Because, I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they didn't have an In-N-Out Burger either, but they had Blake's Lotta Burger. They also had Whataburger, and they were both better than In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah, like have you ever been to a Baker's?
Like a regular Baker's or a place called Baker's?
No, like a fast food chain burger.
No, not
Baker's.
A fast food chain. No.
Because like In-N-Out Burger is almost the exact same. The burgers are good. I'll give them that. Their fries are probably some of the worst things I ever had.
See, that's my thing. I judge you by your fries.
Yeah, like I like going to hole in the wall, mom and pop burger joints.
Oh, you're talking my language. You're talking my like
we got a couple here. We got and it's always like Zorba's Burger, Chris's Burger, Gold Star Burger, something like that. And it's you can drive through or you can sit down, but you get a big fat burger, you get the big fat fries, with a lot of salt. It's just better than any fast food chain.
When I lived in Albuquerque, what was it? I-25 and I-40. They called it the Big I. And it was just like all the truckers went through there. So they had like truck stops like you would see in like movies. Like they had like showers and hotel rooms and stuff like that.
I've been there. I used to be a trucker.
Oh, you used to be a trucker. I'll get back to you on that.
For 6 years, I was an over-the-road trucker.
I'll definitely get back to you on that. But my roommate Jeff and I, we used to go there because it had the best food. You go to the diners that catered to the truckers, you get like a plate of spaghetti and like huge. We were broke college kids, so that was like the best value for your buck. And we would go there, get like big burgers. And it was funny because I believe it or not, I was skinny at one point and Jeff was tight, but we would eat like we were starving. And it was like the classic like 70s diner waitresses chewing their gum. Hey, how you doing? Like they would get into the trucks with the drivers and drive away. You know what I mean? It was that kind of place. They sold those little epinephrine pills right on the counter. So we bought them and we didn't know what we were doing. Next thing you know, like for 2 days, we're just like, back before they became illegal. It was fun. So now you got to tell me about being a trucker before we get into comic books.
Ain't nothing to it. I mean, trucking is trucking. You don't get to see the world, but if you want to see what the back of a Walmart warehouse looks like in Kansas, become a trucker.
So what did you drive like a big rig across the country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked for a company called Swift when I first started, and then moved on to smaller companies doing LTL loads and kind of dedicated routes. across the U.S. But
so you got the CDL and you do the air brakes and everything like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Right now I'm an electrician in New York. So I work in Manhattan, probably the worst place if you're a trucker. I got truckers every day showing up with like 2,000-pound reels of wire. You know what I mean? And these guys are from Texas and they're always pissed. You know, they're like, I could drive across the states and no problems. He goes, but it takes me like 7 hours to get through Manhattan in a truck. It is the worst. But
you even have to have you have to buy them annually, special permits just to go into the city proper.
Right. And now they got congestion pricing. That New York City is just making it like they want a ghost town. You know, that they want like people to just walk into the city. Like they don't want any cars. You know, but they forget jobs got to get done. Truckers got to get in. You know, that everything's a one-way street.
Oh, we don't have to. You guys can do without stuff.
We can do without stuff. Yeah, just you know, next thing drones will drop everything.
You guys can run a couple of miles out of town to go get your groceries.
Yeah, there you go. That I always said to people, like, a trucker was my backup job. When I was a school teacher and I was so frustrated, I actually went to like trucker forums and was asking, how do I become one? And I just thought it would be the perfect job for me because, you know, just sit in my car. I could listen to whatever music and not bother. I was single at the time, just live in the car. And now I don't know if you know, but I got to a car accident last July and I broke my neck. And now I'm scared to drive it. Now I'm like, I lost my backup job. Like if I get hurt and I can't be an electrician anymore, like I can't be a trucker because I'm like scared. You know?
No, you don't gotta be scared, dude. You don't have to be scared when you're a trucker. Like if anybody's gonna get hurt, you're gonna be hurting other people.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, that's true.
Like I remember I've witnessed because when you're a trucker, right, your entire waking life is behind the wheel, so you see a lot of what's happening on the road, right? Like I drive even when I just drove here locally, right? I would drive an hour to get to work, then drive for 11 hours. And then drive an hour home and go to sleep. You know, it's just you spend your entire life on the road, and you see, and you start to get a feel for how the road and people's behaviors on the road works. Like my wife will freak out because somebody's doing something over there. I'm like, that's happening over there. Like that's has nothing to do with me. I'm perfectly fine. You can tell you kind of after a couple of 1,000 hours, you get a sixth sense of like. If something is strange, just let off the gas and just let that strangeness pass you by, you know? And then just keep on going, whatever. But I've seen a car underneath a big rig being dragged by a big rig, and the driver had no clue what was happening. Like, you are the safest that you could ever be behind the wheel of a big rig.
I remember, this is how stupid I was. I moved to Albuquerque, and I had a red Trans Am with New York plates. And I just paid for the plates, so I had like a year before I had to do new plates. So I didn't get my plates changed. So it was just New York plates, red Trans Am. Everywhere I drove in New Mexico, the cops pulled me over. You know, they thought I was like a drug runner or something like that.
Yeah, they were jealous of your sweet-ass Trans Am.
And I remember I drove that out. I had a fight with my girlfriend, and I drove way out. Like if you ever saw Breaking Bad, you know, where they would make the meth in the Winnebago. I drove way out there, and then I just literally like 3 o'clock in the morning just walking around. I can't believe she said that to me, and then I get back in the car and it doesn't start. It's just, you know, that was the end of my car. You know, I was like, oh my God. And I had to hitchhike back, and a trucker picked me up, and I'll never forget. That was the first time I've ever been inside. But the guy had like, usually he says he does runs with his wife, like, so she'll sleep and then they'll, you know, and it was like a hotel room. And I was like, this is a cool job, man. I gotta.
Yeah, just a regular sleep. That's what we had. We had a sleeper cab, and we had the bunk beds in case we wanted to do team driving. But I never did. I was always solo. That's one thing about truck driving is that don't get into it unless you're okay being alone. If you need to talk to somebody, do not get into trucking.
Yeah, I like talking to people, as you can tell, but I also like being alone. You know, so I best of both worlds. I'm happy sitting here for 10 hours a day, not dealing with people, and then it's time to talk to people, and now I'm Mr. Talk to People. So, how did you get to to comics then from trucking?
Oh, by mistake. You know, there was some dude where I worked at. I was doing a local route. I was actually driving for the company Lowe's, and I was doing overnight deliveries. And I used to check in and out of the distribution center 4 or 5 times a night. And one of the security guards happened to find out that I can draw, and because I was also doing their, it was Christmas time, and I had done all the windows for the company, and just to make some money on the side. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that you knew how to draw." And I think he saw me wearing a Batman T-shirt one day, and he was like, "Do you like comics? Would you want to make a comic with me?" And I'm like, "Nah, not really. I'm kind of busy." But
no, I would.
He wore me down because it was every day I saw him, 3 or 4 times a night, checking in and out of that DC, and he wore me down. And I was like, you know what? All right, I'm going to look up some YouTube how to draw comics. You know what I mean? How to make comics. I liked comics when I was younger, but I never. It was for other people. It was for people that lived in New York. You know what I mean? That knew how to that had connections to the business.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, traditionally,
where I'm from, we're a transportation hub in the Inland Empire. It's just trucks and warehouses, So I was like, okay, I'll look it up, and I started looking up how to draw comics. Right, so you watch some tutorials. I was watching like the what is it called, the box office artist and some other people online, and then I started watching videos on like what's that guy's name? He calls himself Rob. He does like just catch ups on stories. I think it's called Comics Explained.
Okay, yes. Comics Explained, yeah.
And I had left my phone on at night, auto playing. One video would come on, and then YouTube would just play the next video. And then it auto scrolled to a guy named Diversity in Comics. And I started watching him, and he was talking about like what not to do in comics and what's bad. And I was like, okay, so this is interesting. Let me listen to this. And I started liking it because that was the first time, and I had never in my life like watched somebody on YouTube live. I would watch YouTube videos, tutorials, how to build a deck, that sort of thing, but I would never actually see like a live person on YouTube. And he was live, and he was talking about comics and doing stuff, and that's kind of how I got into this community. And I started doing that comic with that other guy, but then he ended up getting a different job somewhere else, too far to kind of.
Oh, so you never finished that original story?
Never even started it, But I kind of got into the idea of making stories because I started seeing him, Richard C. Meyer.
Yeah.
And I was like, he was talking about ideas for making a comic. And then he started talking about how easy it was to publish your own stuff. And he started spitballing ideas because he was thinking about maybe making a comic himself.
Yep.
He was coming up with
I happened to catch him at the beginning too, and I got swept away with everything. I loved that I was watching a guy from the beginning to producing a comic. So I'm with you on this. It was fun. It was a fun time.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so let me try that. So I ended up connecting with somebody on Facebook on that forum. It was like comic writers looking for artists, artists looking for writers, that kind of deal. Just collabed with somebody. We did a book called Black Emerald way back in the day. And it was trash, just straight trash, and went nowhere. But it I cut my teeth on it, and I started getting the idea of like, maybe I can actually tell the stories that I want to tell myself without a writer. Without any help. I mean, I'm listening to everybody talk about how making comics now with computers and a simple program like Clip Studio, and you can just basically make a complete story, and it all depends on you on whether or not it's going to come out just as good as anything else out there. There's no actual barriers to entry anymore, just your work, And I was like, that's amazing, because I've always been in love with the idea of storytelling. But I never thought there was an outlet that I could do on my own. And when that happened, that actually started the gears turning, and it got me real excited doing that that stuff. And that's how I kind of got into this. Just started pumping out artwork and ideas.
So it's funny because I still wanted to make my comic, but I can't draw to save my life, so I was looking for writers. I wonder, is it easier for an artist to look for a writer than a writer to look for an artist? Because I got a couple of people that were flakes, that were scammed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know a couple of friends. I'm not going to mention the names, that they paid a lot of money for art and found out that these people were just swiping other people's pages and selling it as their own. So I wonder, is it?
I didn't even learn that was a thing until like a few years in.
Oh yeah,
and that was a tactic and an option. I didn't know that, but no, it's much easier for an artist to find a writer. And it's not because one's better than the other. It's just the nature of how long it takes to do something.
Right. I agree. There's probably 100 writers to each artist. Now, when I say artist, I mean an artist that I would pay to see their work.
See, the thing is, that's not the case. There's 100 writers to 100 artists. The only issue is that artist takes 100 years to do one thing,
right?
Whereas the writer can do 100 stories in 100 days.
Absolutely. Well, also there's a bunch of writers you probably don't want to read their stories, or or you don't.
Yeah, and there's a ton of artists that you don't want to see their work.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, because right now I got 6 or 7 scripts out with 6 or 7 different artists, and every day I'm like excited to see a page. But yes, I could realistically write a script in a week, and then it'll take you months to draw it. Yeah. So yeah, that's why with long box comics, only the artists make any money. That's my pledge to you.
That's awful pledge. No, it's just a time thing. It's just
right.
there's a baker's dozen artists out there, but it just takes, the art takes longer to do than to write the story. That's just
how long does it take you to draw a page?
It depends on the level of detail, but on average, I guess it would take me about 2 days to do a page.
2 days to do a page. So I mean, I don't know what your page rate is, but I'm trying to think
because it's like because the thing is, and also depends. It depends on a bunch of factors. It depends on how specific the writer wants what is in his head to be on the page, how persnickety and nitpickety he's gonna be. How many times I gotta be like, okay, is that not what you want? Or maybe the writer does know exactly what he wants and is able to convey that to you perfectly.
That is something. Like I'm working with Renzo. He was my original guy, and for 99 times out of 100, it was like, I'm not even joking. Like, this is what I pictured, and this is what he drew. And a few times that it was different, I'm like, that's better, because he's a visual guy. You know what I mean? One time I actually was like, I can't. It was one panel, and I'm the writer. I don't draw, so I'm like, is this a big deal? Do I have to pay him again to draw the whole page over? Oh my God. Like it's what I asked for, but he just set it up in a way that I thought it was bad. So I asked him to change it, and he just goes, yeah, okay, 2 taps. I didn't realize it was digital, and he just removed the layer. Like it took, like, as we were talking about it, he fixed it. Now what would you do if you submitted do you do digital or do you do physical drawing?
I mainly do digital, but I do both.
Okay. So what if you drew a physical page out and the artist is just like, no, like what do you do? Do you put white out on a box and redraw that panel? Do you draw another panel and cut it and paste it? I imagine that's what the Marvel and DC guys did.
I would probably do that. Yeah, there's no way that I would because, like, for instance, what I would do is I'll get in a backstage hangout like we're doing here, but just off air. And I'll say, okay, what exactly is it that you want? And then I'll start doing the sketch as they're telling me.
Oh, that's cool.
I do, like, very, very rough thumbnails. And if they say, yeah, that's what I want. So that way I don't run into this thing of that's not anywhere near what I wanted.
That's fair.
Because if that were to happen, I'd be like, piss off.
I know one of my artist buddies just within like 3 pages just told this guy, I can't work with you. Just you know.
It doesn't take very long.
Right. I like my scripts. We got Marcus Kellegrew in the chat. He's got one of my scripts. I tried to describe every possible thing, and then I don't think I did it with with Marcus's script, but I'll be like, you could cheat in this panel. You know what I mean? Like, I understand in this panel I asked for all of this. So in this one, I do a close-up of Dillard's face over here. You don't need the buildings and the spaceships in the background. You know what I mean? So this, I try to make it so that, all right, you a little cheat that ain't really a cheat. You know, so like, did you develop those tricks? You know, Marvel and DC, you could see like panels that are just like, this was the panel that they spent all the time on this panel, and this panel was just a close-up of Ben Grimm's face or something like that, just to save time.
Because I mean, I guess if you wanted to, right, you could. There are ways to not cheat, but still save time.
Well,
but I mean, if you set up where you're at and you know what's happening and what position they're in the room or wherever they happen to be, there really is no reason to draw like the wall, the caddy corner, the aquarium in the background, and all that. You've already established that. There really ain't no reason.
Right.
Unless there is a reason, then you just draw it.
Right. A lot of
that's the hard thing about drawing, is that sometimes you just need to draw what's in your head. And what is in your head happens to be very time consuming. And you just got to do it.
Now, so you are writing and drawing your own stuff. Like the Buckler is,
yes.
This is yours. Now, before the Buckler, in an action comic, does the writer give you, like, do you like it better when the writer says, okay, he throws a punch and this guy ducks down and next thing you know, he's got an up, like he gives you all the choreograph? Because I know a couple of writers that it's just like 3 pages of fighting, you know?
Yeah, I prefer that.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. I guess I'm a weirdo. I sent Marcus like 5 pages of fight choreography, you know? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Like if somebody said, like, that's what we went through with the Golden Patriot.
Okay.
The Golden Patriot. He was like, and then basically we're going to have a fight scene at the end. And I was like, okay. Thank you. I got it from there.
But at the end, so you know what he's capable of. You know what the bad guy's capable of. So all of a sudden, he just doesn't open his mouth and shoot fire, which he never. You know what I mean? Like you understand the character. I could probably do that with Renzo now with a fight scene. You know, after drawing the Patriarch for 3 issues, he could figure it all out. If Marcus is teasing me, it's getting all changed. You know, and then I got another artist, Stippling Vaughn. He's asking me questions. You know, and it's like, am I bothering you? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, but I like, it shows that, like, oh, I didn't think of that. Like, one question, I was like, I didn't think of that. You know, now that's how an artist thinks.
It's the same thing with like a relationship, right? A marriage or whatever, a friendship. It's unspoken expectations.
Right.
You have to get the expectations out of your fucking head, out of your mouth, and into somebody's ear, or they're never gonna know what you want. Like, I'll tell people, like when they want a commission from me or something, I'll say, okay, at this point right now, I need you to be annoying. I need you to get everything out and tell me in the thumbnail stages what is going to be happening, what you like, what you don't like. Because once that's over, now we're talking about redrawing stuff, which is additional money.
Right.
So
it's funny that you said
get it out now or forever hold your peace.
I have a friend that tells me horror stories of like, okay, this is what I want you to draw. And then they'll ask questions. And the guy will be like, yeah, whatever you want. And then it's done. And now it's time for $300, $400, whatever the price. The guy's like, could you change it? It's like, dude, this is done. This is inked. This is complete. You're asking me to change the whole drawing. Yeah. You know, John Byrne says, don't pay until he's done. Because if you don't like it, I'm going to sell it. I'm John Byrne. But, you know, we're not on John Byrne's level yet. You know what I mean? Right. So I've commissioned a few things, and I send over like stick figures, like, I don't.
And dude, that stuff is actually so helpful. Like, I'm working with this guy Eisen Ascor, and he sends me the most basic, like, dude, this full failed stick figure class. But he has the stick figures in this small panel, another stick figures in this larger panel, so I can tell what he wants, and it helps so much. Yeah. You know, and it's just because he's in another country in a bad area with bad internet, so I got to do most of my communication through email. So, you know, and so because he sends me these little things, you know, it goes a long way with getting your point across. Stick figures are great.
Mike Barron says that he does that. He draws stick figures. Like he puts in like word balloons and everything like that, and then sends it to the artist. I don't do that. Maybe I over describe each panel, but it's funny because I'll put like paragraphs into a panel of description.
And that's one thing I hate as an artist. I don't like reading.
Yeah, and then I'll Renzo will send it back to me, and I'm like, he left out about 75%, but you know what? It's good. That's fine. This is perfect. This conveys this. Like anything Renzo left out was superfluous for the story anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. The thing is, there are people out there that you got to come to grips with sometimes. That there are writers out there that know more than me. That when it comes to drawing a comic page, and I got to be like, well, the guy knows, so let me just do what he wants, and it usually comes out for the better.
So you said you were just working with a security guard, and he saw it. You just drew something for him, and he liked it. Because I got a security guard on my job. His name is Spider Gonzalez. What a cool name! Like this guy's born to be.
That guy sounds like a criminal.
I know. So it's just today, I said I'm working on a script for the Patriarch #1, and I rewrote it. And Spider Gonzalez, you're going to be the security guard in the museum. And I said, is that okay? He goes, as long as I don't get killed. So I said, oh, don't worry, you have to get killed. So I just went home today and changed page 3 of the script because Spider Gonzalez got killed, but now I can't kill him. But
I'm okay with getting killed. Just don't kill me in an embarrassing way.
No, he was going to get killed by the horrible supervillain, but I'm changing it now. So now I'm actually thinking there could be a return of Spider Gonzalez, who's a little pissed about what happened in the museum. So he'll be happy with that. But he draws too. It's like the same exact story. He was showing me his art. And he was like, maybe me and you could work on a comic someday, and he's really good. So there you go. It's like security guard meets a guy at work. I'm a writer. He's true. So we changed the information. So he's going to submit some art to me. I think that's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah. You got to find the people. Yeah. You find the people that are not only willing to do it, but willing to finish what they start. And that's rare. There's a lot of untapped talent out there.
Yeah, that what you just said there, people willing to finish what they start. Everybody's enthusiastic at the beginning. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Okay, we're up to page 18. Are you still enthusiastic? We got to finish.
Like I was talking to this guy. He used to be in the community a while back. I don't know if you remember him. Named Model 316.
No.
And he's one of those guys that does miniatures. He does modeling.
Oh, okay.
And he was actually a professional modeler. I saw his resume. He worked on the set of Titanic and stuff. It was really good.
Oh wow.
Doing the modeling for the boat and stuff like that. But he told me something that I just recently told in an interview. That it was like one of the things that changed the way I looked at doing this. And he said, you got to learn to love the minutia. Like you find something that you're bad at and is just mind-numbingly boring and tiring, and learn that's going to be your new thing. Just learn how to do that better than anybody else. And just sit down, get your coffee, do what you got to do. Go and do some push-ups, go rub one out. Who knows what you got to do, and then sit there for 14 hours and do the minutia, and learn to find joy in that.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, and then that right there, every time I can start getting stuck or start getting frustrated, has been the best advice I've ever gotten in artwork.
It's funny. It's funny that you said that because, I'm a working electrician, and that's like every once in a while you'll just get this boring, repetitious job. I remember a couple of years ago, it was just this big machine. All the electricity went to the machine, like big cables, and then it distributed low voltage throughout and it controlled all the lights. It was an apartment building, so it controlled all the heat. Everything was like a smart building. So you took these big, thick wires, and I'm not even joking, wires a little bit thicker than threads, and they were all red, and they had a little number on them, and they sent me, the blindest guy, and I loved it. At first, I dreaded it, but the minutia, you just take the wires, and then I take little shapes, and by the time I was done, it looked like a circuit board. You know how Jack Kirby does like the The Celestials, they
Yes.
all have lines and they all bend. It was, and I'm not joking. I must 3 weeks. I just sat on a bucket and just shaped these wires in, and ever since then, I'm just like, give me a little tedious job of shaping in the wires. Like, if you don't take joy in that, I got to quit my job. So,
Yeah.
I'm an
Like
artist.
it's like when you work at a job like a warehouse or something, when you're doing something repetitive, you either find it boring or you find it relaxing.
Relaxing, yeah.
You know, and if you can do it and you can find it relaxing and actually enjoy what you're doing, find that that doing this repetitious job actually gives me time to think about other things that I want to do or whatever, and learning to love that aspect of it will make you really good at it. You know, and
I had a little I didn't have Bluetooth speakers, but I had a little Bluetooth, I put it on the machine. I was listening to probably Diversity in Comics, some music, and it was great. I just went to work, said hello to everybody, went into this well-lit room. God, if it wasn't well-lit, I would have died. And I just sat on the bucket for 3 weeks, 8 hours a day, just did this listening. It was like 3 weeks of like getting paid to listen to music, Like my father would go out in the garage and like work on, at one point, he would get these hobbies, and then just as fast as he got into them, I think once he mastered them, but he was carving bird houses. He made these ducks. And then at one point he was reupholstering furniture, and he would just go in the garage, put on music, Frank Sinatra blasting, drink a beer, relax, with the plane polishing, and I mean, that kind of stuff. It's fun. And I guess drawing, like you said, do you draw like all the windows in the building? Like, that's when I stopped when I was drawing. Like, I remember me and my friends were going to make comics, and we drew a spaceship, and I was going to draw like plates, like as if the spaceship was covered in armor. And I did like,
I was doing one of the hardest things for me was I was working on this book called, it was a book about mechs called Mavericks.
Okay.
And I was doing a supplemental story where these Mongolian warriors were fighting against mechs on a horseback.
That sounds awesome.
It was really good. It was a very dense story. It was probably one of the best written stories I've ever read. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Aaron Neff, I believe, was behind that. And I was drawing this mountain range, but I had decided, because I'm a psychopath, I had decided that this mountain range was going to be primarily just a duff and screed rocks. So everything was just rocks and jagged cracks and everywhere, and all of these these screed that comes off the side of the mountains, piles of rubble and stuff.
Right.
That plus a horde of Mongolians on horseback. Right. So I was drawing this, and I was like, golly, this is taking so long. But that was when I was like, okay. When I started thinking about each panel like it was like almost like a finished painting, that it was going to be in a gallery somewhere. So I can't chintz out on any aspect of it. I can't copy paste. I can't. And let me just sit and draw each individual angle. Let me vary up these angles. Let me try doing this. And I sat there for hours and hours and hours just doing the rocks. And when I was done, I was looking forward to the next panel to draw more rocks, because I had some ideas for rocks that I didn't get out in the previous panel. And I was like, this ain't bad. This is pretty good. This is good.
Are you a full-time comic artist now? Or do you do
Yes.
trucking? Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. What happened was I had started doing, in this community after Richard C. Meyer put out a book called Jawbreakers a while back. Everybody that was watching him wanted to do a comic.
Right. Myself included, yes.
And there was a big gaping hole for artists. There was a bunch of people who had ideas and wanted to do comics, but there were no artists. And I was because I was like one of the few artists that was actually like submitting artwork to Richard C. Meyer on his email and stuff like that. Like, hey, what do you think of this idea? People kind of knew that I drew. I would do fan art of his. I would do like Jawbreakers 80s style and that kind of thing, and just post it on Twitter. So they would start hitting me up like, would you be down to work on a comic? I said, I'm a full-time trucker. I can't, but I can do side things, I can do small projects, which I started taking on. But here's the thing, like once I started taking on some of that work, the pay was pretty good. And then after about a year of doing that, I was so backlogged with work. I took 2 weeks off of work and just did commissions as my vacation, and that was pretty good. Like I made a decent chunk of money off of that. And I was like, okay, well, let me see if I can. So 6 months later, I did it again. Took 2 weeks off and just said yes to every commission. And at that point, like after I did that about 4 or 5 times. And the 5th time, I was actually making more money on my vacation than I was making if I were to be at work. So then I was like, well, let me try this again a little bit later, because making money off of one bulk thing after you have work built up is different than an ongoing income.
Can this be consistent?
Right. So after I did a bunch of trial and error and had a lot of conversations with the wife, I was like, I think this is where we need to go, because this is it's more work, but it's the same or more pay. So that's what I started doing, and then I was like, okay.
Plus, you're home. You get.
Yeah.
Do you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah, you get to see your kids.
Yeah, that's
truckers.
invaluable.
All these cross country truckers, they're all single. Or they're divorced. You know what I mean? A good family, man. You get to stay home and see your family. That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And I was used to not seeing them. I would be on the road. I would say 3 months, and then come back for 3 weeks, and then go out again for 3 months. And at the time they were very, very, they were babies still. You know what I mean? So,
and you're missing everything. Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I was missing that much anyway, because what are they doing? I missed a couple of coups and rolling over on their stomach. Big whoop, But after a while, I was like, yeah, they're actually talking now. They're doing stuff. I want to be there for that.
Yeah. Kids are sweet. That's good. That's good for you. That's a good success story. And everything's still going. You still got good. That is good. And I just think it's funny because I have conversations 3 times a week with people in comics, and they all say the same thing except for you. When I was a kid, I wanted to make comics. And you were like, it kind of fell in your life. That's awesome.
No, I never thought dude, I'll be honest here. I come from a very Mexican family. If you wanted to do artwork, what are you, a queer? Well, why don't you go to work? Okay, I'll go to work. That's what I did. I did warehouse work. Where I was loading trucks, unloading trucks, unloading trucks for years and years and years. Then I became a supervisor. Then I would supervise people and also still unload trucks and all. It was awful, And it wasn't until I wrecked my back that I was like, I gotta actually find a different line of work, because I was sitting there doing 8 Vicodin a day plus muscle relaxers and shit just to make it through lunch break. And then I'm like, okay, let's go back.
Did you hurt your back while driving the truck?
No. This was before I became a trucker.
Oh, okay.
When I was doing warehouse work, I wrecked my back.
That was one of the things when I was seriously, because I couldn't deal with being a teacher anymore, and I was looking into just becoming a trucker. They all said the same thing, that they all had bad backs. They all from just sitting all day long, and then. But
for me, it was a relief, because I was sitting there thinking, what am I gonna do? I realistically can't make a living, because the only thing I know how to do is warehouse work, and I can't do that anymore. So I remember at that time I was talking
crisis. Yeah,
I was talking to my wife, and I remember it very distinctly because it was a very difficult moment. Right, I was talking to she was at my fiance at the time, and I said, hey, you may have saddled yourself up with a lame duck here. You might want to move on. Because I realistically could not see a way forward. And she wasn't having any of it. She was like, no, we're gonna figure it out.
That's a harsh conversation to have. Yeah.
It was.
Good for your wife, man. She's a keeper, obviously.
So that's when we were like, okay, well, what can you do that's not gonna require you to constantly be bending and twisting and bending? That's when truck driving came up. And I was like, okay, so I went to the Swift school, did a 3-week program there. They prep you to take the test. I take the test, passed everything first time, boom, boom, boom. I was on the road making money within a month.
Yeah, and truckers do pretty good.
Yeah.
If you could deal with the lifestyle, they do pretty good. Like I said, I was single at the time. You know, I was like, yeah, I'll travel. Because even when I was a teacher, I would have the summers off, but I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. All my friends were still working, so I'm like, I'm by myself. So I used to just hop in my car and drive around the country. And I'm like, I could do this and get paid. You know, I enjoyed it. I would just pull over at like National Forest, sleep in my car, or throw a sleeping bag on the ground. You know, I would drive into Mexico and just hang out in Mexico. You know, I had 8 weeks off every year and
Yeah.
no attachment. You know, I
I
love
did
it.
that sometimes too. I remember when you're a truck driver, you do this thing called your home call, which is you punch in, I want to take my time off, because for every week you're out, you get 1 day off, right? So you're out for 2 weeks, you can come home for 2 days. That
Okay.
sort of deal. So I was out for I think 3 weeks, and I was like, you know what? I'm really close to New York City. I've never been. I put my home call in for the zip code of New Jersey terminal. And so they would just send me there and take me off the books for the next 3 days and then give me a load when I come back. And so I just would take my vacation sometimes in New York, take my vacation sometimes in Tennessee or
Oh,
whatever
cool. Yeah.
for my days off.
Yeah. I did. Before my wife, I dated a girl that worked for Delta Airlines, and it was just like she could fly for free, and she would have like a pass for me. So like it was like, oh, it's the weekend, and I was a school teacher at the time. It's like, you want to go away for the weekend? So we would go to Boston. You know, we would go to comic conventions all over. You know, get into a hotel, like we literally have like 1 day to go to the convention, get back, because I got. But that was a lot of fun. I enjoy that. That was fun. She was a
Yeah.
psychopath, but it was fun while it lasted.
But that's what's weird because like I've always been an artist, right? Since I was little, was very good at drawing. And that's what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to, but because I came from a very hard-headed kind of background, there was no such thing as jobs in art. It was either you're a super famous fine artist that's in galleries or you're homeless. You know, I didn't know that there were like other jobs in art and there was nobody around to be like, yeah, why don't you do that, or why don't you try to be this, or
Right.
either are you like some sort of a painter, or are you homeless? You know, that's all it is. So I didn't see artwork as like an actual career.
Yeah, it was a fun hobby. So you would draw it all the time as a kid,
Mhm.
and your family kind of discouraged it, or like,
No, they didn't discourage it, but there was just, you know, that's cool. It's a cool hobby.
that's cool. Now go to work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've been saying this for a while on my channel. I think all kids are artists until the world discourages them. You know, like I every kid just picks up that pencil, crayons, or whatever, cuts and pastes. They for me, it was myself. I just didn't have the attention span. Like you said, you loved the minutia of the drawing. I that was just torture. I'll never forget drawing that spaceship. You know, and I was like, I can't get the next one's gonna kill me. Like I just psyched myself out. You know, I wish I had that advice. Learn to love the minutia. That really is a good. I'm gonna remember that. Because Renzo, he did a panel in Heroic Tales #1, and the bad guy had an army of robot ants, and he said he spent so much time on this one page where the robot ants were swarming him, and he's like, John, I never want to draw another ant again in my life. And there's thousands upon thousands of ants swarming on top of this guy. Would that kill you to draw something like that?
Of course it would, but you know, you gotta, like, I remember I was doing this book with Luke Stone and Piper called Rift Riders, and they had these they called them like rift monsters, and they were like these beetles I had to invent. They looked kind of like almost like those what do you call those beetles with the big horn on the nose? I forget what they're called.
Like the rhinoceros beetle?
Kind of like that, yeah, but like also like a ladybug mixed with other stuff. And then I had to draw a scene where it was a bunch of them swarming over a little tiny town. You know what I mean? Like a town in the woods. And they're like, oh, there's a big one on the roof, and then like maybe like 7 or 8 over here, 3, 4 over here. I'm like, oh god. And they were, you know, they were bug monsters, so they had a lot of little parts, you know, and a lot of little details and bumps and horns and claws and teeth and everything. But I mean, just doing that, it's like with any other artwork. If you have the time and you're really not pressed to get it done, and you can sit there and draw and refine. Refining things is like really fun,
Okay.
especially monsters. You know what I mean? Because they don't have to be on model
Right.
because
Nobody can tell you that that's not what that monster looks like.
like I invented it. I know what it looks like.
Yeah. It's exactly like it's supposed to look. It's a freaking monster. Yeah.
Yeah, but doing that stuff is fun. But when you're doing that and you know that the time allotted, you are no longer making money on this. This is now just free labor. That hurts to actually be sitting there and doing that. It's like, oh, come on, just because some pages you can do and now you're slightly ahead, and some pages will come up and now you just set yourself behind financially. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I are you familiar with Sal Buscema from Marvel Comics? His brother. But that's one of the things that he used to talk about. He's like he was. They say that he was the first mainstream comic book artist to like make $100,000 in a year. In the early '70s. So this guy was like, and he used to say that no line is wasted. You can't correct, draw. This is a job. Every page has to be profitable. And then. Yeah. John, he would clash with John Romita. I met John Romita. He was telling me the stories with John Romita. It was just like, I can't send this page out. Like he said he was under stress. Sal Buscema would walk away from and then he would start erasing, because anytime he erased when Sal was there, he's like, that cost you money. Do you know how much money you just spent erasing when
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And that's the thing. Like, you don't really know. Like, there's different strokes for different folks and all that, but as somebody who doesn't have an established body of work or career, everything that you do has to be the best thing that you've done.
Right.
You can't falter or kind of phone in a project, because people will see that and say, well, that's his latest stuff, and that's what his latest stuff looks like. And that's no good. Yeah. So you got to be real careful. It's not easy. It sucks, but it doesn't give you a lot of room for creativity. But I believe that being under the gun and performing under the pressure is probably better in the long run for you.
You like the pressure?
Yeah. Than being able to do what you want. Like, there's this artist that I love. His name is Drew Struzan. And he does a lot of paintings for movie posters.
Okay.
He's the guy that did the Indiana Jones posters.
Okay.
Back to the Future posters, the Goonies posters. Any epic painting poster that you've seen, it's probably a Drew Struzan. And when his stuff was rushed and under the gun, and everything he did was culturally relevant and amazing. And because now this guy can name his price.
Right.
And he does a lot of his own personal kind of artwork. It's all trash.
Oh,
like,
really?
I'm saying, is it technically good? It wasn't as good as his other stuff. It may have more impactful meaning to him personally. I mean, the sentimental value must be through the roof, but I mean, visually, it's nowhere near as impressive or interesting as his work when he had to get it done. Like, there's a guy, Guillermo del Toro, a director.
Right.
And he was directing a movie called Hellboy.
Yep.
He was telling the studio, I need $1 million earmarked because I want a Drew Struzan poster for this movie. And that put him over budget for them. And they end up not even using that poster for the movie.
Yeah, it's hanging up in Guillermo's house, though.
Right. But the thing is, like, he is so good and so iconic that it doesn't, like, whatever the price is, they'll find a way to pay the guy because they need that, because that's what he's worth. He's built that up to the point where if you don't want it, then don't get it, but this is the price it is.
Yeah, he could call his own price. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you like to draw? If I know you said you're working on your own scripts, but let's just imagine now you got some writer who's just like, I want to hire you to do a comic. What genre would you choose?
Ooh, let's see. I would love to draw a comedy. Yeah,
A comedy.
a comedy.
Yeah, I can't. Comedy is the toughest to write, I think.
Like I would like. Okay, you remember like I guess if you could say genre or style of drawing, something like the EC horror or the old Spumco Ren and Stimpy things where facial expressions can be outrageous and grotesque and over the top. Physicality can be stretched. You don't have to conform so tightly to what actually works in anatomy. You know, I something like that, something fun looking. Like I
Yeah.
remember there was this old Tales from the Crypt, I think it was, where it was the lady was like, you know, she killed her husband and he was a butcher and she had all of his pieces at the end of the story all lined up in the butcher's window there, you know, meat for sale, you know, and it was like her husband's foot and his arm and his face and all that stuff. Just real cool looking stuff, you know?
Yeah. Horror. Yeah. But comedy is all timing. So like, I think. Well, you're the artist. You correct me. I'm guessing, but like, for me to write something funny and then give it to you and then draw it for it's almost like the error. You know how they say what like you take cells from a clone and then you clone it and then you clone it again. Sooner or later, the error, like, because comedy is timing, and
Yeah, you got to there's got to be very close communication.
right. Yeah, I haven't even attempted comedy yet. Like, I think horror is timing, but I think horror would be easier. You know, because everybody, you know, murder, monsters, the dark, you know, there's universal things that scare everybody, isolation, you know. But comedy, what I think is funny, what you think is funny, what people in this chat think is funny, what I think is nobody laughs at what I think is funny. I'm that guy who's like finding things and
Right.
giggling all day long, and I tell people they just like get to work.
Oh,
So,
Logic in your chat, Logic's Finest says, Dillard, did Struzen do the poster for Star Trek The Wrath of Khan? Absolutely iconic. I don't know, but I know he did every poster for Star Wars.
oh, he did all the posters for Star Wars. Yeah, then I definitely know that
All the originals and also the Phantom Menace and all the prequels, and then also for all the sequels too. That's all Drew Struzan.
now I'm curious to look up his own art. You know, of course I know all of these movies. You know, I've seen them my whole life and I never knew the guy's name. The Buckler, there you go. That's it. So now I'm curious. Yeah, that would be fun. Like you, horror. Yeah, like you said, because you could have the over exaggerated expressions. You could have people like getting severed in monsters. That must be fun to draw. Like you did sci-fi. Like I'm looking at what setting is the Buckler?
That's near reality. It's reality, but with it's like an Indiana Jones. Like it's reality, but with a fantastical element to it.
Okay, like Card Day. Forgive
Yes.
me. I'm not, yeah.
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
It's actually takes place in 2015 era, like around that time. That's when the first book starts, is in 2015.
And Golden Patriot is in World War II. Did you have to do a lot of research, look up these tanks and weapons and uniforms?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you enjoy that?
A lot of research. And that's one of the things that, like, the World War II stuff, people are very, very particular about the depictions of World War II stuff. But not only that, it's also very fascinating. Like, when I started doing research into, in particular, planes and the markings on the planes, that was really cool to learn. Because I guess there's different things, right? Like, when you see a plane and it has a bunch of crazy looking colors on it, like, you've seen some of these images of, like, big red and white stripes on these planes, but stuff like that. But, like, you can have air inferiority, air superiority, and air supremacy. If you have air inferiority at the particular point of the war, your planes are almost indistinguishable from each other. They're camouflaged. When you have air supremacy, you got the wackiest colors on your planes. You have big, bold numbers on it so you can tell that's your homie and he's from this regiment and he has this loadout on his plane from all the way across the sky over there. You know what's happening because you don't have to worry that your guys are going to get shot down because you guys have air supremacy. You know what I mean?
So it's like a psychological, like you know, we're showing up. You know, we got the
yes,
the juice now. Oh, okay. See, I listen to Chuck Dixon every weekend, every weekday. Excuse me. He puts up 2 things a week, and he talks a lot about World War II and like does the research. Like he buys these books, and whenever he does like a World War II or Vietnam or like a war, he says he buys like, okay, Vietnam, this book, and he mails it to the artist. Okay, Korean War, this book. Do you have like go-to reference books? Because I have a story set in World War II, and I know
Certainly not. I have the World Wide Web. Why would I need a reference book?
There you go. I always say that too. I say that a lot at work. I get myself in trouble. I'm like, we have access to all the music ever created by humanity, and you're choosing to listen to Drake right now. What is wrong with you? And then guys get mad at me because I just don't like that guy. I don't like his music. I think Foley art, I think, has become a lost art. Sci-fi films look better than because of the Foley art going back to the 1950s. Yeah, CGI. I agree with you. When I see CGI in a movie, to me, CGI is supposed to be an enhancement, but I like practical effects. I want to see a guy.
Is Foley art where they do that?
The sounds is right. Foley art.
Yeah, I thought Foley art was like sounds, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because one of my friend's wives was a Foley artist.
Okay.
And it's funny because she recorded us like laughing and making noise, and I'd love to find out what movie I'm in, unless she was just blowing smoke. But she was a Foley artist. She would record breaking sticks. Things like that.
He's talking about look better than SFX. Sci-fi films look better than SFX.
Yeah, Logic. Could you clarify that comment?
Maybe he's talking about that matte painting they do, like those, like in the backgrounds they used to do in the old sci-fi movies where I would even watch this documentary where they were talking about this background art in Independence Day. The movie Independence Day, they even had background artists where it was like they had the ship, but they even had all these little fiber optic cables that were lighting up all the lights on the spaceship. And it was like the background art with little holes poked in. It looked amazing.
Yeah, he says the background art. If I don't know if you're saying it wrong, but I do know that they had matte paintings. Like if you saw a lot of 50s and 60s sci-fi movies, like the actors were walking in front of a gigantic. They did that a lot in Star Trek. A couple of them were pretty famous. You could buy prints of the background Star Trek matte paintings. I love that stuff too. It gives it a realness that you like. The prequel Star Wars don't they just look a little dead? Like nothing.
They look so dead. Here's something that blew my mind. Okay, there's a ton of practical effects in the prequels. I had no idea. I assumed all of it was fake because everything looked so polished. And Jesus Christ, I'm getting a phone call.
Check your car warranty. Your car warranty.
Yeah. And like I was watching this. Remember that show Mythbusters?
Yeah.
The guy Adam Savage, the guy with the hat, and the goatee. They both have hat and goatees. The younger guy, not the funny old guy with the beret, but the other guy with like the cowboy hat. He worked on the prequels, and he was showing he has his own YouTube channel called Tested, and he was showing some of the stuff he was doing and how there were waterfalls in Tatooine. Not Tatooine. What's the planet that the princess is from in the prequels?
Yeah, not Coruscant. I know what you're talking. It's gonna drive me nuts now. You put me on the spot. The same world where Jar Jar Binks is from.
That world, yeah, the Gungans. But
Naboo.
Thank you, some person.
It was gonna drive me crazy. Thank you, some person.
He was talking about this miniature model he was doing on Naboo of this waterfall, and how in order to get it correctly, he had super fine like he had crushed sand. Like sand is already fine, but he crushed it into almost like a powder, almost like a powdered sugar, and he was slowly had a little mechanism pushing this off of a cliffside. You know what I mean? To make it simulate. I was like, I just assumed everything in that movie was just CGI because it looked so fake.
Right.
It's a waste. It must break his heart to know that he did physical effects for this movie, and everybody just assumed that it was.
I remember
CGI.
Man, our names just leap up. What's his name? Mace Windu. Jeez, like you know, Mace Windu. What the hell is that actor's name?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. How can I forget that guy's name? But he said that he was so excited to be in Star Wars. He goes, and then I get there and I'm just walking down a hallway in front of a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wanted to see robots, he wanted to see models and everything. Like, you know, how and what's her name? The Princess Amidala. She there's a scene they're in the bedroom and she starts packing a suitcase. She said she had to ask for that because the scene was just her and Anakin just standing there talking. She goes, shouldn't I be doing something? Like, you know, it's so she actually told George Lucas, give me a suitcase, give me clothes, I'm packing up, because she goes, I could be more naturalistic. I don't know. I think now you get me on one of my favorite bugaboos over here. Is George Lucas is like the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars. Like Star Wars was successful despite every attempt he did to sabotage Star Wars. And the more he got control over it, the less we forget the sequels. We hated the sequels so much. We bullied that man into just washing his hands and selling it to Disney. And now it's even worse. But
they were bad. They were objectively inferior. They were bad. I remember people just laughing out loud the first movie when you had the that fake Yoda. Then they brought in the second movie, I believe, a puppet of Yoda. I don't know if they lost the original puppet of Yoda. They forgot what he was supposed to look like. But it looked awful.
I remember when Darth Vader came out and he goes, no, the whole theater started laughing. Mm-hmm. You know, the worst Star Wars laugh was in the sequels when Princess Leia flew through space. Everybody in the theater just like popcorn sprayed out of their mouths. It was just so bad looking. Yeah. When you back to CGI, did you ever see a movie called Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow?
No.
I was.
And you know why? Because it came out really close to a movie called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes, it did.
And that movie starred one of the worst actors in the world. That schlub that played James Bond. What's his name?
Sean Connery?
Yeah, that loser. That guy can't act his way out of a paper bag.
Well, he's just charming.
I will never watch a Sean Connery movie ever. And because I hated Sean Connery so much, that movie kind of reminded me of that movie, so I didn't watch Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
It's funny. I do have irrational hatreds of some actors. I'm like, I can't see this movie because I hate this actor. But Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Feel the same way about Christian Slater. Anything he's in, absolute garbage.
This is really funny. But Linda Lavin, she was in Alice, a TV sitcom. I get angry if anybody even mentions her name. You know, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. But Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, it was Angelina Jolie and the guy who played Jan Rog in the Captain Marvel movie. But it looked so good. It looked, the commercials, it had that like old paintings and it looked like Buck Rogers. And then I went to go see the movies, and it was, you could just tell it was two people in front of a green screen and everything was CGI. Like the actors,
it wasn't no Rocketeer, I'll tell you that.
Oh, the Rocketeer is awesome.
Yeah, it is
awesome. Yeah, because they were really there. They were on a balloon. They were
that movie right there is what gave me a lot of the inspiration for the Mighty Golden Patriot.
Oh, like, well, that's a good movie. You know,
I love just the idea of somebody, flying around. Yep. Fantastic.
Lucas was a great sci-fi guy, but a bad sci-fi filmmaker. He should have let Spielberg. Yes. Yeah,
the thing is, when you're a director, especially people like Spielberg and Kubrick, like you have a team of people around you that you have to listen to because they know what you're not the only person. I don't know if this guy was sniffing his own fucking farts for too long, but he thought that he knew best about everything in the whole world. But I mean, and another great quote that I've been, chewing on for a lot of years was the guy was saying, John's Long Box, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be wrong?
Ask my wife; she'll tell you.
No, I'm asking you. What does it feel like to be wrong?
Nobody likes to be wrong.
No. That's what it feels like when you realize you're wrong. What does it feel like to just be wrong? It feels like you're right.
Okay, all right. I didn't know where you were going, but I see.
That's what I'm saying. When somebody said that, I was like, Oh my God, it does. Okay, so when it feels like you're 100% right when you're wrong, and I don't know if George Lucas never learned that or something, but this motherfucker needs to, number one, not mess with other people's work, because going back and changing the movie is fucking with other people's legacies who's worked on films.
And not only that, it's Star Wars went beyond George Lucas. Like it or not, the original trilogy movies, it became a cultural phenomenon. Like, we wore t-shirts, we played that, we have these memories. And then 20, 30 years later to edit those movies, I think it's editing American history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't do that. Like, like now that inserting Kamala Khan into all the X-Men, I mean, they can't physically put her in my comics that are in my back, but don't do that. You can't change the past. It's editing American history. It's made it. Star Wars is you're editing world history. That movie, like sci-fi is, there's before Star Wars and there's after Star Wars. That is, I don't think anybody will argue that isn't a definitive line in the history of filmmaking. And to change it, like, I know people who have never seen the original theatrical version of Star Wars now, because George Lucas got rid of the, all those VHS tapes disintegrated, got lost, people threw them away, and I'll tell them about, like, Han didn't shoot first, I mean, Han shot first. Han was a murderer. He was a dangerous person. No, he wasn't, but I could go on and on about how George Lucas, like, I love him, but
I have never fought with anybody about Star Wars.
What's that?
I have never fought with anybody.
I'm talking play fight. I'm not a Tom Cruise fan. Empire Strikes Back's my favorite film. Yeah. I think Lucas is butthurt about that. The universally best Star Wars movie he didn't direct.
Yeah, dude, I am a Tom Cruise fan. Let me tell you, I don't like Tom. I have some sort of, I don't know what it is, some sort of a deep-seated subconscious hatred for Tom Cruise. But I can't deny that every movie he's in, I've enjoyed.
It's funny, that whole Scientology thing and acting like a weirdo, that really soured me on Tom Cruise. But I have to say, his behavior, especially during COVID, got me to like the guy. Like, they leaked tapes that he was just like, dude, like, he was yelling at somebody, I forget who, but he was just like, you got to wear the mask. He goes, and he's like, I know this is bullshit. This is bullshit. We all know this is bullshit, but they're going to shut down the job, and nobody's making movies right now except for me. And we're going to put that guy out of work.
Because if you remember, the reason Tom Cruise started getting lambasted in the first place was because he was speaking openly about mental illness and how it was self-inflicted, and how a good diet can change most of that stuff. And the pharmaceutical companies want to keep you sick. And because he was talking about that, they started saying Tom Cruise is a nutbag. He's crazy.
Yeah. It's funny because I believed them at the time too. Now I'm like, hey, these conspiracy people are onto something. They're not just conspiracy. My biggest concern with, like, during the whole Katie Holmes divorce, like that whole, like, because I don't know what you know about me, but I had a hobby in my 20s. I was obsessed with cults, and I would try to get recruited by cults. I would literally go into Manhattan and like look lost and try to get recruited by all these cults and stuff like that. So I was going to, like, Scientology centers and, like, taking e-meter tests and arguing with them, and I was doing research on L. Ron Hubbard. So that whole time he was with Katie Holmes, so I automatically didn't like the guy. But now I got to admit, he is the last real Hollywood movie star. His personality doesn't enter into it. Doesn't matter. Don't know the guy. Never met him. But he's a total pro, and he does his own stunts. And during all of this super woke stuff, he was making regular Hollywood blockbusters. So you got to give him respect.
Like, if you separate the art from the artist, the guy's good.
Yeah.
He does good work.
Yeah. Wow, too much information. Marcus, I'm a weirdo. Have you been listening to my channel? My wife actually made me stop doing it when she moved in. I was getting phone calls from cults, like, "Hey, how you doing?" I was like, "Oh, pretending to be interested," because I wanted to go see, like, their secret. Like, did you guys have orbs? I want to go and touch the magic orb that you guys worship. Like, I wanted to get into the inner circle of all of these cults, but my wife's like, "I'm going to leave you if you pursue this." So I had to stop.
Yeah. You gotta be careful with that stuff.
Yeah, I had a friend who got into why can't I remember what it was? But he was getting into it. But he, just like me, he just wanted to learn it. And they actually locked the doors and wouldn't let him leave. He was just like, he was literally like,
That's what I'm saying. It's not that, let's say, for instance, because not every cult and not every religion in the world can be true. So even if you don't believe that messing with other things will have some sort of a supernatural bad omen effect on you, but you got to be careful dealing with people who believe that stuff and are willing to retaliate against you for what you're doing,
Right. I'm going through a thing right now. My wife is rediscovering her religion, and one of the things I say is I don't believe in the occult. I'm too much of a rationalist. I said, but I do believe that other people believe in the occult, and it amounts to the same thing. I do believe that there's people kidnapping kids, like adrenochrome and all that stuff. You're going to tell me nobody on this planet is doing those horrible things? Like, Tom Cruise. Yes, I heard horrible stories about his personal life. I worked with a guy who claims to have been Tom Cruise's assistant. And when he rejected becoming a Scientologist, Tom Cruise fired him. So that was another thing I didn't like about the guy. But I don't know if it's true or not. I wasn't there. But I think we could all agree he does excellent movies,
Yeah. Because, like, honestly, I mean, everybody has their own opinions about things.
Right.
And everybody, when you're in charge and you have power, when you're footing the bill for all this stuff, you get things your way. And that's just a fact of life. And sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but life isn't fair.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you live in my house and I'm paying for the water, heat, electricity, rent, gas, and food, you got to do what I say.
Right.
Or else you're going to be out on your ear.
My father used to say,
and that's not fair
to
you personally. But that's life,
It is. My father used to say, it's fair. He goes, I'm doing the work. I make the rules. That's fair. He goes, look at it when you're an adult and you're making the money, and then other people get to make the rules in your house. That's not fair. He goes, believe it or not, this is fair. My father.
If I'm running a production company and I find out that somebody is an evangelical Satanist that's working for me, and I'm gonna say, you know what? Why don't you get the fuck out of here with your crazy Satanist bullshit?
Yeah.
And that's my right. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like that you're influencing everybody else that I'm supporting.
Well, I don't. Yeah, evangelical. Yeah, keep it to yourself, or But
be quiet about it.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened to shame.
Oh, shame is bad. I was a school teacher, and my principal told me to stop using red pen to make remarks on all when you did your homework, this is wrong, you put a red X, minus 5 points. She goes, use a purple pen. I go, why? She goes, because red conveys too much shame. I said, yeah, but in 25 years you're going to be telling the next guy, don't use a purple pen. Pen converts. I said, how about we work on the fact that these kids can't do math so we don't have to make any remarks on their paper at all? She looked at me like I was a space alien. Shame is good for you.
It is.
Shame is absolutely 100% good for you.
Dude, I was talking to my buddy TJ, and we were talking about when he was young. He was saying, "Yeah, I had this criminal activity that I engaged in, where I would go in and try on shoes at a Foot Locker, and then I would ask the lady to go to the back and find a different size, and when she did, I would walk out with the shoes." Right? And I said, "Okay, but why did you ask her to go into the back? Why didn't you do just like people are doing nowadays? Get up, look her right in the eye, and walk out of the door with the shoes?" It's because he had some shame. He knew he was doing wrong, so he did it sneakily. That's gone nowadays. People are just, I'm taking this and I deserve it.
Yeah. We gotta bring back shame. I don't know if you watch if you watch The Fourth Age with RJ, but he says that and I'm gonna butcher what he says, but he says somewhere like between the 80s and by the end of the 90s, we switched it from like a guilt culture to a shame culture. He goes, we controlled we knew we were doing something wrong and we felt guilty for it. He goes, now it's a shame culture, so we are like the bad things are defined by people around us. So if you surrounded yourself with a bunch of people like, oh, it's good to go, that guy is a colonizer, you could go and steal his stuff because you're an oppressed person. You don't feel that guilt, like, because shame is defined by the current group. Whereas, and I know I'm butchering this, but I find it so fascinating that this guy does a comic book channel and then gives these philosophical, but yes, we need to bring back like guilt, shame, tell people, no, what you're doing is absolutely wrong. Like, I had an argument with an apprentice at work that he sneaks into the subway because I was talking about, oh man, this job sucks because I got to buy the Long Island Railroad, then I got to buy Subway, and he goes, just jump the turnstile. I go, first off, I'm 55 years old, I can't jump the turnstile. I go, second off, you got to pay because I ain't paid for that. And I'm like, dude, everybody, you're stealing. You're stealing from me. I ain't Steve. And this kid was like 23 years old, a full-on adult. I'm trying to drill it. You got to pay. Everybody pays, What if everybody doesn't? Basically, he's saying you pay, so that's good, And he, like I said, he's 23 years old. He had kids. This wasn't a child anymore. And you hit one of my you pressed one of the buttons of things that drives me nuts. I like these girls just making OnlyFans. You're a dad. Can you imagine if your kid just made an OnlyFans?
I used to have a kid. I would disown them immediately. No, there's shame, and that's good. It's a good thing.
Right.
It's good to if you're doing something wrong, to feel bad about what you're doing, and maybe that shame on your heart is your higher power convicting you to change. I don't know, but it seems to me that it's if I were to really sit and think about it, I would have to put the blame solidly on the media and the family not bucking against the media, because the media will put in front of you and put in front of your children as they're developing the most sensational things they can to get ratings, to get views. But you have to be able to say, oh, I heard something. I wonder if that's true. And then maybe you'll talk to somebody like a, role model, and then they will tell you their point of view or show you how to think critically about something.
I think it's the breakdown of the family unit. 9 times out of 10, you show me a kid who has no shame, and I'll show you a kid who doesn't have 2 parents living in their house.
Yeah.
It's the normalization of the single parent, and I'm not specifying race because the statistic shows white kids with a single parent have the same amount of crime. We're talking, percentage wise to the population and things like that. But it's you don't have a mom, and then this whole demasculation of fathers and toxic masculinity and stuff like that. This, to me, that we've been wearing away at that the 60s. Now we literally have 60 years of normalization of broken families.
You know what my dad used to tell me? Let me tell you what my dad used to tell me. Again, I come from a very hard-nosed Mexican background. He's like, that job you're working at, you're not making enough money. Like, you don't even have enough money to support a family, let alone a side family. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, there are guys out there right now supporting 3 families. You need to find a job that makes more money.
I got to do another show in 1 minute. I could talk to you all night. First off, I got to say, you got the coolest voice. You should be doing radio shows. And
I should do radio shows.
You sit there with your cigarette and everything, like you're like the coolest guy ever. So you should be doing like a Joe Rogan podcast, just you and another guy smoking cigarettes, talking about shame. I'd watch.
Shame. I want to do a show with Anthony Romano called Race Relations, where we just talk about the racial tensions going on in the entire world.
Oh, I'll do that with you, just not on my channel.
But yeah, you get going. You got your show to do. I got some pergola patio wood that I have to prime and paint right now. So
Oh, there you go. Real man stuff. There you go. Put on your Wiener Schnitzel hat and start working with your hands. That's another thing. How many of your friends just don't know how to do anything?
All of them.
Yeah, they don't know how to fix a toilet. They don't, like I was telling the guys at work, I have my neck brace on. I have a broken neck. I was out in the backyard chopping wood. I was up on the roof pulling leaves out of the gutter because who else is going to do it? I'm going to pay some guy to do it. How emasculating is that?
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to be sitting here in my pajamas. Meanwhile, there's a guy on my roof working on my house. My dad would resurrect himself and beat the crap out of me if I did that.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thank
for
you.
all of your
campaign, we got talking so much, I kind of forgot we were promoting your comic. So anybody listening, you have I'm blanking. You have the Buckler, and you have the Mighty Golden Patriot. And
I got a book called The Buckler: The Story So Far, and that is a compilation of the 4 Buckler stories that are currently out that have been made ever. It's everything that I've done for the Buckler so far.
Cool.
So if you want to get caught up on the Buckler before I release the next installment, that's the campaign you want to go see. It's over on fundmycomic.com, and I would appreciate if you just gave it a look. If it's not your forte, do me a favor and just share it out. Maybe it's the forte of one of your buddies. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also have another campaign called The Mighty Golden Patriot. That's available if you want to get that at a website called ripascend.com. And then just look for The Mighty Golden. It should be the first thing that pops up on Ripascend right now. It's The Mighty Golden Patriot. And follow that there. If it's a World War II story about an American anti-terrorist that is trying to fight the Nazi occult. The Nazis are going around trying to find relics of tremendous power, and his job is to stop them from doing that. And he acquires some tremendous power himself to help him fight against this Shadow Reich. And it's going to be a great start to a great story series.
I have a World War II story. If you're doing superheroes and World War II just goes together like peanut butter and chocolate.
Like
it's just
peas and carrots.
Peas and carrots. So Golden Patriot. Yep. Thank you. So I'm going to close it down. Anything you want to say? Because I talk too much and you don't get a chance.
Follow me on Twitter at Dillard Draws, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel, also called Dillard Draws. You can find me on ArtStation. You can find me on everywhere, actually, under Dillard Draws. Just write that down. Type it into Google. I'm everywhere.
Yep. All right. So you're invited. Everybody's invited. I'm going to shut this down, and then I'm just going to reboot. We're going to do It's Clobbering Time, where we geek out and talk stupid comic book stuff. This week, the topic is who would win in a fight, a Kryptonian or a Viltrumite? So that's the hot topic.
The answer is Dillard.
The Dillard would win it. I mean, look at him. Look at him. You just show up with his cigarette, his cup of coffee, his Diet Coke.
I say, hey, why all the violence?
Why all the violence?
And that's when I stab you in the ribs.
Yeah, you lure them into a false sense of confidence. Yeah. All right, but thanks a lot, everybody. I'm instantly just going to light it up. So just this will shut down, and then I'll start because we've been talking so long. But I enjoy talking to people. Thanks a lot. Come back anytime you want. This was a pleasure.
Thanks. I appreciate it, John. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.